Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup. I'm excited. My name is Dennis Shao, the co-organizer of the group. Excited to have a return presenter, Margie Agin, founder and chief strategist at Centerboard Marketing. Margie's going to talk about differentiated messaging for thought leadership and sales enablement. She will introduce a framework to ground content creation in a rich understanding of customers' pains, jobs to be done, and desired outcomes. The framework allows you to pressure test your assumptions and confirm if you're communicating the value of your product or service in a way that resonates with customers. Margie, thanks for joining and take it away.
Cool. Thanks for having me. It's great to meet you all and be back and some new faces. So I'll introduce myself a little bit more in a minute, but I just wanted to start with a couple of stats to see if this sounds familiar to people as kind of the starting point. I don't think I'm alone in this, experiencing this kind of pain. I also, similar to the other gentleman, I started as a content marketer, and now do more broader marketing work. But from the content marketing perspective, it's so frustrating, right? To start creating content, not have all the inputs you need, and then when you finally create something, have it delayed because there's so many decision makers, so many reviewers that aren't all in sync with each other. And I have even had content, I'm sure we all have, that actually never even saw the light of day or was delayed many months because of all of that internal conflict. And or it gets watered down and isn't clear because there's just so many cooks in the broth. So what we're going to talk about today is a framework and an approach that minimizes this back and forth and tries to get everybody aligned up front so that the entire process can go faster. So, and I've been using this framework with clients for maybe about a year and a half. And I'm going to share some examples of what it looks like. And most of my clients are B2B tech companies. So I'm a go-to-market, product marketing, and content marketing person for B2B tech. So I try to bridge that gap between the product marketing messaging and then the content marketing words and distribution. And most of my clients are like cyber or IT or OT companies that have, really technical kinds of content where there's skeptical technical decision makers, right? Or lots of different buyers, and the tendency to all sound the same. And so that's why I started using this type of framework. And for me, it's really helped with content-led campaigns and sales enablement and help that content kind of cross the bridge from marketing also into the hands of sales. So my goal with this presentation I want to share this value proposition canvas to you. I'll be honest that I'm still tweaking it. I've leveraged different sources. Have every time I do it with a client, I learn different things. So I'm really interested in sharing it and getting your questions and feedback. But my goal is that by the end of this, you will have a framework that you can use, whether you're in the content marketing space or you're more in the product marketing space or you can demand gen space, that you kind of bring your group together to start with a value proposition, which becomes the backbone of the not just one piece of content, but an overall content strategy. Align stakeholders, decision makers, whoever is going to be the ultimate reviewer and user of content to speed the reviews. And then also use that value prop canvas as a source of, I think you can get hundreds of content topics that come out of the discussion of the value prop canvas that all ladder up over to your company's differentiators and really guide the buying process and be helpful to your company and its revenue goals as well as to buyers. Okay, so that's the goal. And before we kind of jump into the framework, let's just talk about the term value proposition. And maybe I'll share with you my definition is, but maybe after this we'll take a second and kind of come off mute, and I'd like to hear what you guys think about this. Um, I look at it as something that is really buyer focused, ideally, right? It's not just about you and your company and how special you are, what you sell, what category you're in, but it's really helping a buyer understand why they should choose this particular company or solution and its unique benefits, outcomes, how that's different from something they can get anywhere else. So what I've typically seen with a lot of companies is that it's very me, 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 right? I sell this to these people. And even if it's outcome based, it's still very much about what I can deliver versus how the buyer actually views the world. Um, so I'm curious, what do you guys think about this? Do you use value propositions in your organizations? Um, and if so, how do you guys look at what that is supposed to be? Anyone have any input on
Feel
what they've
free to
experienced?
use the chat or
I
even
definitely
Uh,
do.
oh, here we go. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, you're speaking very well about some training I did with Jeremy Miner's team and how you speak first of the customer's world, asking them questions and driving their pain points over just giving your pitch and your spiel. So it's very reminiscent of
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Go
What was the
ahead,
name?
Floyd.
Go ahead, Floyd. Yeah.
yes. So I really appreciate this. And I would start with the first word that you've underlined appropriately, which is buyer. So many, you mentioned being in B2B tech, and so am I. So we probably have some of the same
Yeah.
fun experiences and traumas from being in this market. And just getting these people to focus on the buyer. They
Uh-huh.
build stuff they think is cool and that other techies think is cool, and then they expect everyone to admire it when it's even halfway done, and to get so excited, and they don't go through this process that you're describing. Um, and I think that I even think that I would have to adapt this sentence into engineer speak for the particular group of colleagues I was speaking to. So this is great for conversation among us, but you really have to break it down for them. Like, who's going to buy this? Why are they going to buy it? What will be their alternatives?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I really like it, and I think it's super important.
Okay. So here's what I would the trauma that you mentioned, right? If we don't have that, a nice crisp value proposition that we all agree on, a lot is at risk, right? There's a lot of waste in many different ways. And from as a content marketer, right, or as a writer, um, what ends up happening is that a content strategy becomes overly reactive, right? That you want to create content, you want to put stuff on your blog or out on LinkedIn or whatever, but you default to just announcements, right? Or talking about your features and how cool the tech is. Or maybe you're in an SEO world and that's still, a high SEO and AEO still or GEO, right? Still a priority. So using that as your guide, you might end up chasing keywords, search terms or trends that are happening in the market, but so is everybody else, right? And so the danger there is that it might be interesting for people to read your content. They might find your content even, but it doesn't necessarily ladder up to helping them make a decision or showcasing your company in a way that kind of connects the dots from talking about a big trend to ultimately turning them into potential buyer. Um, then projects are delayed, and then if you're spending money on promoting content, right, or promoting your offers or downloads or anything like that, you might have wasted ad spend because again, people might be engaging with it, they might be clicking on it, but it's not necessarily bringing them sort of into the funnel, and it makes it less likely that your sellers would use those assets in their conversations because they don't necessarily see how content fits into what the buying cycle might be. So these are part of the reasons why if content isn't connected to the value proposition, it's not it's not being leveraged as much as it could be. And also you are asking the buyers to do the hard work of connecting the dots themselves. And that's putting the hard work on them means that they probably won't do it and they'll go somewhere else. So here's another question I have for the group is, and you already started touching on it, right? But if your organization is trying to build a value proposition, right? Is it giving you what you need as a content person to do your job to create amazing and engaging and unique content? And if it's not, why is that? What inputs would you want to have? Where do you think you should be getting it from? Are you stuck in the position of trying to make it up on your own because you have to create content somehow? Um, I'd just like to hear what people's experience has been.
I can jump in. I mean, I think that once you get stakeholders aligned on the value prop, that's a great place to start, but then you need to go deeper into getting, the stories from the front line, and getting that worked into the matrix of the value prop so that, we're really responding to um, the most common objections that the salespeople hear, the most common complaints that the customer service people hear, and that those become part of how we talk about the value prop and how we work that into the content.
And I don't know what your role is in the organization, but do you go and get that? And how do you get that? If so,
Yeah, when I've played the role of product marketer,
yeah.
yes, I go get it. I
Hmm.
see that as one of the most important roles that I have because then I'm creating the enablement. I'm creating the system and the structure of narrative that then becomes the enablement assets that all of the other teams can use from
Hmm.
social to, customer success.
Yeah. Anybody else, especially someone who maybe doesn't have that product marketing role or skill set? Okay.
Well, I'll go if no one else
Okay.
does.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I'm at 0 to 1 right now in building my company, so I have unlimited amount of options to build content, and it's hard just to choose which way to go. Do I do social media? The most I have is SEO blogs that are being written for me as we speak, but other than that, I don't know beyond that what content to approach this with.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So you guys kind of described, I think, opposite ends of the spectrum in a way, um, but also the same end goal and desire, which is to have kind of that source of content that you can then pull from, whether it's you yourself or a third party, like you said, that's being written, or others within the social media team, example, that everybody needs to pull from, but you're trying to create the structure. So that's how I had the same problem, and that's how I came to put together this value proposition canvas. And it has 6 different sections. So what we'll do is we'll kind of parse apart each of these different sections. And what it really provides is, a way to document all the different questions that you might ask, and also make sure that what you're talking about in terms of the customer's world, which is on the left, is really a match to what your organization actually does and what you'll be able to deliver on, so that everything that you write about ends up having a purpose and sort of the connected structure ultimately into what makes your organization special, but connects back and forth between the customer's world to your world. Um, I adapted this there's a company called Strategizer, as some folks might know, that has something called the Lean Business Canvas, which is for startups, and it helps you put together what they call a plan on a page. And then this is sort of an offshoot of that, which is the value proposition canvas. But I've adapted it and changed it and put together my own questions. And so, like I said, I've had some learnings along the way. And um, I try not to make it like a fill in the blank, sort of Mad Libs kind of an approach, because I really find like the devil is in the details. Like if you just give people, a fill in the blank structure, um, you get very superficial answers. So the way that I have executed this is that each one of these 6 segments has a set of questions underneath it. And I've done this in a workshop where I bring different stakeholders together. So it depends on the size of company, right? But head of marketing, head of sales, sometimes there's sales engineers, which I find are, have like tons of information in their in their heads about working with customers, customer success people, not too huge a group, but definitely a cross-functional group. Um, I've also done this as a questionnaire, which I don't think works as well because you don't get to really like have the back and forth and dig into the answers and understand them. And I've also done individual conversations with each of those stakeholders rather than everybody together. And that didn't work out. It was because of timing, and I wanted to move ahead. But ultimately, I really found that these people needed to be in the same room with each other and hear each other's answers rather than me being the one to try to highlight the misalignments and close the gaps. And so the best way that I have found to do this is to do like a few hour or afternoon kind of a workshop session where everybody's together and everybody can kind of debate and talk about and hear each other's perceptions of all of these 6 different categories. Okay, so I'm going to go through each of the 6 categories, and then I'm going to show you an example of what we came up with at the end for a particular company. Okay, so first question, who do you help? So this is really about your ICP or your best fit customers. And this in and of itself, honestly, could be its own workshop or its own sort of engagement review to get on the same page about who your best fit customers are. But it's an important starting point because all of the other answers about the customers really stem from this. Right? So we want to know who is your ICP and not just who is it easy to sell to, right? Or who is it easy to market to, but who takes your call, but also who ultimately is the best throughout their entire life cycle with you. They had great execution, they were profitable, they didn't suck away all of your service and support time. You had high impact because they were a great partner to you, and so you have outcomes to talk about, and they were involved, most likely to renew, and even has potential for growth. So honestly, even this situation, getting on the same page of this situation can be an effort, but you want to get started to have some hypotheses and kind of fill in the gaps about who your best fit customers are. Let me just go through a couple more slides about the best fit customer because this is such an important foundational piece. So as part of who do you help, we look at all the attributes. So most companies will do kind of a generic, in this industry, this size, in this country, right? And kind of leave it there. The more you can really understand what is going on inside that company's business, you can look for attributes and signals that will help you find essentially look-alike customers that are similar to the ones where you've already had the most success. So things that you might want to look at typically could be, where are they in their life cycle stage? Like, did they just get funding, for example, or have they just gone public? Market position is an interesting one. I have one client that really likes to target not the leader in the market, but the second or third position because they feel like part of their value prop is to help that second company move up in the world. And that company is, very motivated to do so. Could be organizational dynamics, like are they really distributed, or did they just hire or bring on a new role? Like now they suddenly building an AI team, right? There's these kinds of signals that really help to indicate their readiness to talk to you and readiness to buy those products, to buy your products or services. So we want to know, we're going to answer the rest of the questions based on the company that fits this kind of a profile. And lastly, within the company itself, who we advocate for. So it could be it could be a whole buying group, right? But let's just focus on the champion for the moment. What are their goals, their motivation, the jobs that they need to get done? What does their day-to-day look like? As someone already mentioned, what questions do they ask or objections? What might cause them not to move forward? And then how, in their own words, do they describe value? So all of that, and I spent a lot of time on this is, the first segment here on the customer side, um, because that alone really sets the stage for the rest. I'm going to go through the other five, and we can stop for a sec. Okay, then we have part two. Why do they need help, right? Why are they in pain? This more as you can really understand how this shows up in their day to day and what that looks like and feels like. You can really get a picture and agitate that pain. What's the underlying issue causing this? Um, Oftentimes, what we hear are symptoms, but there may be a root cause underneath that is actually causing these problems to show up. And then the trigger. Why now? What's the urgency? Why do they need to make a change with what's going on right now? And an interesting one is also, are they feeling some kind of pressure from their customers? And maybe their customers are changing. So there's some tension there that they have to address. So potential answers to this could be, as you want them to be as specific as possible. I mean, pretty much every company in the world has the same basic high level goals, right? They either want to increase revenue, they want to decrease their costs, or they want to lower risk. But if we leave it at that, this is where every company starts ending up sounding exactly the same, right? So we have to kind of get underneath that to the next level down, which is really what is going on in their business right now that is like the biggest, scariest, most painful and frequent problem that these companies need to fix, your potential customers need to fix. So I gave some examples, right? And we could test these. It could be more than one, but the reason why I like to get all these stakeholders in the room is because we don't want 7 or 8 or 9 problems that we can talk about in a value proposition. We want one or maybe two. And so we have to pick which is the biggest problem that is so expensive that without going so high level that we're just talking about decreasing costs. This is the type of level that examples that I like to sit at, which is like, this is really the underlying root cause that is the specific part of the problem that our company helps to fix. Okay. Part three of the customer side is what is preventing them from realizing their goals. I think this is so juicy for content creation because there's so many different things that people may be trying that just have not worked out yet. And we can talk about and compare the pros and cons of these alternative solutions. It might be competitors or competitive ways of going about it, if not direct competitors. The do-it-yourself method, right? And then there's the do nothing method. So the stories of struggle that's where like the emotion and the rich storytelling comes out. I had one customer say that they would much rather try to sell to a company that has tried to solve their problem themselves and failed, right? Than to somebody that, or even used a competitor rather than somebody that doesn't even realize they need a problem. sorry, that realize that they have a problem and they need a solution. So those that have tried and failed, there's tons of interesting stories about what got in their way. And typically these are, there's a lot of very common reasons, that they say. The data wasn't there, right? Or we didn't know how to fix it. The IT team was like, no, 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 we can do it ourselves. Or there's some kind of a misalignment with priorities, or, the people side, they can't define the business case. So if you know what's standing in their way, then you can address those head on with content. Okay. Then we have this is the number 5. So we're still now we're we're now still these two were no, this is still the customer side. Now we're finally able to move to the company side. Okay, so we're flipping. If you remember that first chart where we had the circle and then we had the square. So now we have moved to number 4, which is the first one on the your company side. So we get to talk about the outcomes. What part of the problem do you address? What are the short-term wins and the longer-term wins? So for example, it could be something, again, we're not trying to find like we just, we drive revenue. We need something a little more specific, like accelerating time to launch, right? Shortening mean time to repair, red flags on audits, or shifting to a different type of a model. We want something, this is often the hardest part, is companies saying, well, I don't have all the numbers, right? Not every deal has a number attached to it, or the company doesn't want to share. So one potential way of working around that is to show, is to put it in terms of companies can expect. It's not a guarantee, right, that you will also get 40% higher growth, but this is commonly what we see is. Something like that can still be part of your value proposition, and it can be a North Star metric that you share with customers. It can also be third-party statistics, right? Sometimes the problem that you're solving is pretty well documented and known. So there might be some kind of a third-party statistic that says like better aligned companies achieve 40% higher growth. That's a Forrester statistic, actually. So if your thing is, you're a company that aligns different siloed teams, you might be able to reference a third-party stat. Okay. Next part of your solution is what do you believe? This is your point of view, right? Your perspective that is not, we're not yet talking about your products and your solutions, but we are talking about your view of the world, and how you compare yourself maybe to how others view the world. It's an opportunity to paint a picture of what it would be like to work with you and share a little bit about your signature methodology or your, design principles of how you create products. So it could be something like we stand for, right? We do configuration, not customization, because we don't want to lock you into something, right? It's open source, so it's not a black box, and we show you all the formulas that you want to see. Something I say in my business is I believe that an outside consultant should have had in-house experience, so they really understand the hurdles and the obstacles that internal teams are facing. That's something I would say because I have had that, right? So it benefits me, but it's a differentiator to other consultants that maybe have never had that at all. So whatever this is, it's a point of view on the market and where it's heading, as well as what is needed in terms of a solution. And then lastly, and this is last by design, we finally get to talk about your products and your services. What is our category? What is the best solution maybe for different types of scenarios, maturity levels? And to answer this question, we need to prioritize, if your company has multiple different products, we need to prioritize what you really want to sell most. We don't necessarily need to talk about every single product in the solution set, but we want to talk about where we expect the revenue to come from. And then if there's something new and exciting that we want to talk about in the future, that can be part of the value prop too. So I'm going to stop here for 1 second before we get into the examples. Um, so going back to the two sides, your customers and your solutions, once you have sort of, I'll call it like the slush fund of answers to all of these different questions, which you have recorded, right? Now you can start to prioritize and also map. So why do your customers need help, right? What business problem are they really struggling with? Should really relate directly to the outcomes that you're going to deliver. You should be mirroring and reflecting the outcomes that we provide to address the business problem that they have described. The who do you help really gets into like these are the day-to-day struggles, maybe what they've tried before, what has stood in their way, why didn't the old way work? I can see that I connect that to what do you believe? Because what you believe might be that doing it in-house takes longer, doesn't have the right skills, doesn't, allow for the support. Um, and so that may speak directly to what somebody said in the who do you help section, because that was why their approach failed in the past. And then, even what prevents them from realizing their goals, you could see that that could connect to the products and services that you offer because you're making sure that you're putting a solution together for them that directly overcomes the hurdles that they have already described. So once we have answers to each of these segments, we can go back and forth and essentially map to say, have we addressed in our solution, the solution that we are providing to the customer, everything that they have brought up over here? And you can even do this you could do it at an individual customer level. You could say, oh, I have this deal come in. This is how they've described all of their issues and problems. Let me make sure I'm putting a package together for them that addresses all of their issues. But if we're doing it in a value proposition world, we're sort of doing it generally across the entire customer set. And so the trick is prioritization, again, to say we've got a list of maybe 10 things. What are the one or two that are the most important, highest impact that we believe is going to speak directly to the customer set that we most want to attract? Okay, I have an example of how we turn the responses into content, but let me just stop for a second and see if there's thoughts or questions, other ideas that relate to this.
Go for it, Floyd.
Yes. So I really appreciate the complete outline, and I'm actually going to use some of this in a contracting work that I've just started. So I really appreciate it. It's very
Yeah.
well timed. Now, when you first talk to a potential customer or you give a talk out of this, half a dozen different areas, each of which has two or three or four important points. What do you find yourself most often getting engagement around? You sound like a really good listener for a marketer, which is great. But how do you first get interest that allows you to present all this and then get people in a room and go through all this so you can deliver results?
So, what an interesting question. So, a lot of times I think there's a forcing function of a client saying we have to redo our website. Okay.
Yeah,
Or,
right.
right. Or they say, we're going to go for another round of funding, right? And we need to redo our story. Or the sales team says the story is not landing. It's just not landing, right? We need something new. So the website one though is the forcing function because that's like the symptom, right? Before the solution. And it gives you almost a hard deadline and a really specific thing that needs to be delivered. So I generally, when I see that opportunity, I'd say, okay, before we all go doing that and writing content, let's take a step back and do this as the first step. And that just usually brings up so many things in the conversation that need conversations that should have happened months, possibly years before. But we're finally having that conversation because we have to put something on our About Us page. So, or our
Okay.
homepage.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's that is
Yeah.
how I do it. That there are very few times when a company says, we need a value proposition canvas. Right? But I have to connect the dots like I'm saying here to that before we actually build our content strategy or before we, dive into writing our homepage, let's do this first.
Thank you.
I wanted to share something, James here. So I'm writing and marketing Christian books, but I'm doing it from the perspective. I mean, there's a million pastors out there with with name recognition. So I'm not doing it from that point of view. I'm doing it from a Christian philosopher stage because I have a degree in philosophy, and so I'm reaching them in a slightly different way. But it still comes down to so many times Christians know they want something, but they don't know what they want. And so I'm saying, we make God's word practical for everyday living, just carving out just that practical living using the Bible aspect. But even then, I'm finding people say, wow, I really do need that, but they don't, there's concept and then there's reality. And when your customer doesn't know what's in their own best interest per se, then I think it's very hard as marketers for us to say, or we want to match their exact, need based on their pain points and all that. But if they don't actually know why our value proposition is so unique, what's the argument for that?
So most of the time, the customer is probably not going to use the words that you would use, right? No matter who they are, I think in any industry, whether they're, a consumer who was looking to become more involved, right, with Christian philosophy, or they're a technical buyer who is looking to buy a product, right? Like it's opposite, total different scenario. But their words. That's why I always start on the left, and have those conversations and really have open-ended conversations with customers. And I literally will highlight the words that they use. And most of the time, there's always something that we learn from those conversations about the words that they use, which we then have to reflect in our language. So I think that's got to be part of the conversation is understanding how they describe what their problem is in their own words.
And will that be possible keywords that can also be worked into the website?
I think you'll get some of that from keywords, yes.
Yeah.
I believe, and I'd be curious what other people believe, is that I've got to find a lot of that through conversations too with people. It doesn't have to be a million conversations, but Um, do a lot of customer interviews. I record them. I start to hear the same language over and over again, even after three, four, five calls. And sometimes that language has become the headline on the website. I had, and it's never something that the company would have come up with themselves. I had one guy, this was a company that uh, purchased a product from my client. My client was involved in network operations software. Okay, so it would like monitor for problems that were going on in your network and help you fix them. Okay, so the way the customer described their goal was, now I'm going to curse, but so apologies, but he said, we need to get from oh shit to all clear faster. Right? And I mean, that's like so paints a picture. And the way they described their problem, that's, that's their own language. All right. So just, I mean, that's a colorful example, but I think, and maybe others can chime in, but I think those little tidbits that the way the customers describe it are like the key to everything.
Do they have to be individual conversations over the phone, or do you think focus groups can still play a role in 2026?
So I've done customer advisory sessions where they're all in a group together, but I grab 20 minutes with somebody on a Zoom call and who's a customer or a prospect, and then I record it also. And it doesn't have to be for public consumption, it's just for research.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wanted to check. Liana had her hand raised earlier. Do you have something, a comment or question, Liana?
No, that's okay. Let's keep going.
Okay.
Okay. Um, okay, so I just want to show you an example of how I used this recently. So this was my slush fund of content. So as I did a bunch of stakeholder interviews, um, customer interviews, not as many as I would like because I always want to do more, but stakeholder interviews with our internal people and recorded these and then had a lot of feedback. Not everything made it into the value proposition statement, but a lot of this kind of feedback became source material for future content. Okay. Um, and then we built a value prop that is our draft, that is our working copy for the about page. Okay. So it's kind of an extended elevator pitch that came directly from that content that I showed you in the previous slide. I would love to be able to show you what this looks like in the mock-up of the page, but we're not, I don't have that yet. So I'm sure this will change. Um, but essentially you could see the structure begins with the customer, right? This is who the customers are. They come to us when they need to, right? So here we're seeing the problem that they have, but they struggle with, and this is what was standing in their way. Closing this gap has become urgent. That's the why now piece, right? What has changed? So that's the first paragraph. Even though it's the About Us page, the first paragraph is actually about the customer. And then the second paragraph is what we do, which directly relates to the problems that are listed in the first paragraph, right? We're breaking these silos by building a smart ecosystem. What's so special about our approach? Unlike most, this is our point of view. We really understand organizational change. Um, and then we have the outcome so that our customers typically extend asset life, which is what they said up here was their problem. So I laughingly said, I'm sure it's going to change because I have also found, I said like the website is a forcing function, but I could send this as a Word document and everybody agrees on it. Oh, wonderful. Yes, sounds great, right? And then when they actually see it on the website, they actually see it on the page or in some form or fashion on the home page or the about page, suddenly they have a million more comments. I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but there's something about, when you see it in almost theoretical Google Doc compared with when they actually see it in the structure that just, it just becomes more real for them and more feedback comes out. I think that's just human nature. But hopefully you can see how the structure that we built, and even though it looks a little messy here, I had all kinds of input and I highlighted, the key things that then ultimately became this. So I'm not the only writer on this project. I also had to create the source material that would inform other writers on other types of formats for content. So the last thing I want to show you is a script that the design team, the creative services team wrote for a partner event. And it's a little different because in this event, they did talk more about, they're an IBM partner. So they talk a little bit more about the IBM software up front because it is at that event. But I think you can see I'm going to play it for you. It's just like a minute and a half. You can see how these messages and the value prop are woven in so that there's a like a red thread that goes all the way from the type of content on the previous slide to the type of content that shows up in the video and ultimately will become the type of content that is spread throughout their website and other pieces. So hopefully this works. Okay. Here.
Ideas only make you better if you act on them. Maximo Application Suite has set a new bar.
Hang on.
It offers a smarter, more predictive, connected approach to asset management, helping you extend asset life, enhance reliability, empower field teams, and prove ROI. But the path to mature asset management isn't simple. Teams know where they want to go, but not how to get there. In that gap, confusion, delays, and risk. What's holding you back? Teams are siloed. Systems don't talk. Inflexible integrations, and data that's unreliable, incomplete, or impossible to act on. We help you implement MAS and make it work from day one. Unified workflows, techs equipped with real-time data wherever the job takes them. Inventory at the right place, right time. Compliance and financial insight baked into every report. Our clients extend asset life by 25%, reduce maintenance costs by 30%, and reach ROI in under 18 months. As an IBM Platinum partner, we've delivered 700 plus Maximo projects with 200 plus certified consultants and dozens of MAS upgrades already complete. Our success isn't just about software. It's built on deep reliability expertise. Certified reliability leaders, experts in RCM, FMEA, criticality assessments, and preventative maintenance strategies. We help you shift from reactive fixes to risk-based decisions that extend asset life. We tailor every solution to your goals, your data, and your teams, reducing risk and long-term cost with smart configuration and integration. And as part of Bentley, we understand the entire asset lifecycle, from design and construction to maintenance, renewal, and beyond. Most firms start with software. We start with you. Let's make your vision possible.
Okay. Go back to here. Okay. So that was one example. I mean, honestly, looking at it again, it's a little long, right? But the way that that was shown was at an event. It was at a partner event, and it was in the booth. We also had a version that didn't have the voiceover. So it had a lot of different purposes. It wasn't on the website itself. But having said that, it gave that team a starting point so that they could leverage some messages that already existed, and then suit to their purpose what they needed to do on top of that. That's it. This is me. If you would like to talk more about this, I'm going to send Dennis the presentation, so you'll have like the list of questions as well, if that's helpful for you. And I'd love to hear if you do end up using this with your clients or inside of your organization, what you think, and if there's ways to make it better. I am all ears. So thanks.
Thanks so much, Margie. We have time for a question or two or a comment or two. If anyone has any to share or ask.
Thank you, Marjorie. That was really clear and super helpful.
Cool. I'm glad. Appreciate it.
Go for it, Floyd.
Hi, Margie. Thank you for that. I really appreciate the structured thinking and the systematic approach that you're taking. It's really good. I'll follow up with you on LinkedIn because I have a couple ideas that might be helpful, and I know that your approach can be helpful for me because I tend to kind of know most of what you just said, but not presented in a structured way. So thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And with that, check our meetup page we have some more online meetups coming up that are, already scheduled. And then we have the in-person in San Mateo. So see you at a future meetup. Thanks so much, Margie.
Hey, thanks for having me. Bye, everybody.